Suicide by mass shooting is a symptom of an ailing society, and until society as a whole revolts against the economic framework, which is driving sick and miserable individuals to such acts of desperation, the Democrats saying ban guns won't help, and the Republicans screaming armed teachers won't do a thing. Those pointing to mental health, well, they're closer to identifying the problem, but doubtlessly anyone determined to commit suicide by definition is mentally ill. And while I concede that stricter background checks may prevent some of these tragedies, to attempt to resolve a mental health crisis by involving our corrupt and lawless government is the definition of total insanity. Involving the police, especially for the black community or lefty activists, can result in prisons or morgues. I can and I won't attempt to speak for black America, but I am an activist. And in that capacity, without a lawyer, by the way, I sued so-called President Trump and his FBI minions, and I won. That's great for me, but in a civil case, that just means that Trump and his FBI minions paid me so that they could do the crimes to me and just do more crimes, because that's what they do. Sadly, the slope only gets more slippery from there as my wife and I became the subject of an unrelenting investigation by the FBI, and within this draconian and Kafkaesque nightmare, the police and federal agents erroneously were able to use these kind of gun laws the Democrats advocate for to falsely accuse my wife and I of a plot to assassinate Donald Trump. The FBI and JTTF, they delivered bogus subpoenas to start up 5 grand juries in 2 states. Now that's totally normal. Just shut down our film about the 2020 election and the George Floyd protest. Because, that's what they do. These stricter laws, which the Democrats advocate for, absent a moral compass and a complete overhaul of how policing is done in the U.S., it's insanity. And I just spelled it out as to why. But beyond that, cops are almost universally conservative. So putting all the guns in their hands is a recipe for right-wing authoritarianism at the state level and on the street level, for neo-Nazis committing lynchings without consequence. This is by and large because the so-called law enforcement are sympathetic to the right-wing nuts who support them. The sad part is neither seem to understand they're both doing the bidding of the politicians who are doing the bidding of the economic forces which prop up the system which makes someone want to do a suicide by mass shooting in the first place. On the flip side, the Republican solution is more guns, arm everyone. This, for obvious reasons, is also madness. More guns is as a solution for suicide by mass shooting. That's akin to advocating smoking cigarettes to cure cancer. So here it is in a nutshell. The United States of America is an empire, and at the heart of every empire is an engine of suffering, tasked with the objective of acquisition of resources, land, lumber, food, fuel, all the rest. The fairy tale version they teach you as a child is that the so-called founding fathers, they led a righteous revolt against the British Empire to bring us truth, justice in the American way. And while the U.S. may have separated physically from the United Kingdom, the governments of the U.S. and England, they've never been more buddy-buddy. Meanwhile, the economic system which binds them together and all the other countries of the world together have never caused more human suffering. An inconvenient reality which has made it impossible for the citizens of the world to revolt. Where still the system has expanded on the Roman Empire's notion of the Colosseum, piped to you in real time through TV and the internet. And while these modern conveniences have doubtlessly enriched the lives of many in so many ways, this system has blinded nearly all of its citizens to the fact that we're boiling frogs. Each year, inflation increases. No longer is a single income enough for a single family home, much less a cardboard box on the street. President Barack Obama, upon getting into office, lamented to Greek finance minister Yanis Varoufakis that the 2008 financial collapse was beyond his power. And he had to bail out the banks because, to no surprise, the bankers weren't punished. And, the people were. Similarly, Joe Biden created the largest transfer of wealth in human history upwards with his pandemic response. He gave the so-called bailout to the billionaires, while once again letting the people suffer. Donald Trump, he acted as if he was the antidote to all this pain and suffering and reduction of life and living conditions. But he sowed discord from day one, mandating a Muslim ban, selling $10 billion in arms to the Saudis, and continuing the murderous acquisition of wealth and resources as set forward by the financiers who all have their hands firmly jammed up the asses of the politicians. Now, there may be short-term solutions through government, but make no mistake, the government is beholden to the financial structure which is the source of the suffering. There are no simple solutions. The only way to stop the loss of more human life is putting an end to the system. The real question is, how far are you willing to go to put an end to the killing of more children?